A design review of a safety critical system of the Dhruv advanced light helicopter, involved in a string of accidents including one last week, may be in order, according to a top government regulatory body responsible for the certification of the airworthiness of military aircraft. The Bangalore-based Centre for Military Airworthiness and Certification (CEMILAC) wrote to the three services in the Coast Guard about this on April 23. It has ordered the design review of a safety critical system on board the India-made helicopter by an expert panel to improve its airworthiness even though the helicopter has a stable and mature design. The call for the design review comes on the back of the Dhruv troubling safety record. In the past 5 years, it has been involved in 12 accidents. The Army grounded its Dhruv fleet for a comprehensive safety check after a helicopter crash landed in Jammu and Kashmir's Kishtwar on May 4, killing a soldier and injuring the two pilots. The helicopter is operated by the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard. Centre for Military Airworthiness and Certification, which functions under the Defence Research and Development Organisation (DRDO), reached the conclusion that the design review of the booster control rods is mandatory after an expert committee, formed in the backdrop of a Navy Dhruv ditching emergency landing in water into the Arabian Sea on March 8, explored the possible failures that led to the incident, the officials said. These rods allow pilots to control the helicopter's motion, and any failure can severely affect power input to the rotor blades and cause accidents. Most of the military's Dhruv are currently grounded for comprehensive checks after the string of accidents. The Indian Air Force's latest light combat helicopters, which inherit several features of the Dhruv, were also grounded, the officials said. The regulatory body has red flagged the drastic reduction in the fatigue life of the rods, the officials said. The design review is critical as the Indian Armed Forces operate more than 300 multi-role Dhruv, designed and developed by state-run aircraft maker Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. HAL began delivering these helicopters in the early 2000s. The committee, constituted by the Centre for Military Airworthiness and Certification Chief Executive Airworthiness, found that the most probable cause of the Navy Dhruv incident on March 8 was a technical failure, an error in the assembly of serrated washers in the booster control rods, said one of the officials. It has recommended short and long-term measures to enhance the safety of the twin-engine Dhruv. The design, development and qualification of the steel booster control rods that are tolerant to assembly errors shall be expedited, and the compliance of the new design shall be aimed for implementation in 6 months to 1 year, Centre for Military Airworthiness and Certification wrote in a letter dated April 23 to HAL, the three services and the Coast Guard. Though the helicopters are matured from the design point of view, having been exploited for more than 3 lakh hours, still there is scope to review the design lifting aspects of the safety critical system by an expert committee as a long-term measure, said the April 23 letter. It was written by Centre for Military Airworthiness and Certification Director, Helicopters and Missiles, (DMISAC). The Centre for Military Airworthiness and Certification constituted committee's finding related to the malfunctioning of the booster control rods on the Navy Dhruv is in line with the failure analyses done by Council of Scientific and Industrial Research National Aerospace Laboratories (CSIR NAL), Bengaluru, and HAL's Retrieving Research or Design Centre (RWR&DC), said a second official. The drastic reduction in the fatigue life of the control rod with wrongly assembled serrated washers has been verified experimentally at RWR and DC. HAL is part of the committee's investigation, the letter said. A Coast Guard and an Army Dhruv were involved in accidents after the March 8 Navy incident. The Coast Guard helicopter made a forced landing in Kochi on March 26, followed by the precautionary landing by the Army Dhruv on May 4 in Kishtwar. On May 4, the pilots reported a technical fault to the air traffic control before the incident, which led to the Army suspending Dhruv operations for the second time in less than 2 months. The three services grounded their Dhruv fleets for safety checks after the Navy Dhruv ditched into the sea following unexplained loss of power. The Navy choppers are still grounded, while IAF is clearing its Dhruv for flying in batches after the mandatory checks. The Army had resumed Dhruv operations a few weeks before the May 4 crash landing, after which it grounded the helicopter again. The light combat helicopter, Prachanda, inducted last October, was also grounded. It is capable of targeting enemy air defenses, slow-moving aircraft, high-altitude bunkers as well as carrying out counter-insurgency operations. Centre for Military Airworthiness and Certification has prescribed measures for the resumption of Dhruv and light combat helicopter operations. Clearance for both platforms, limited to 100 flight hours each, will be given after mandatory inspections, the officials said. Further clearance for up to 500 flight hours or 1 year, whichever is earlier, will be based on the successful completion of 2 critical tests by HAL, they said. These tests involve the flight testing of 2 helicopters with instrumented control rod assembly for verifying the multi-axis loads on the control rods, and the fatigue testing of the rods with correctly assembled serrated washes to confirm their original capability, the officials said. The top regulatory body has also called for evolving an accelerated life testing or methodology to pinpoint any other potential failure modes and to assess the life of the Dhruv Integrated Dynamic System (IDS), the officials said. The main gearbox, upper controls and rotor head as a single unit is called IDS. The armed forces grounded their Dhruv fleets last year too after an Army Rudra helicopter armed version of Dhruv crashed in Arunachal Pradesh in October 2022, killing all 5 personnel on board. To be sure, it is not uncommon for an aircraft fleet to be grounded for inspection after an unexplained crash or incident. The Dhruv is a multi-mission helicopter in the 5.5-ton class. Dhruv operations have been hit in the past too. The helicopters were grounded in 2006 following tail rotor problems, and later again in 2014 after a fatal crash. The July 2014 crash, which left the chopper's 7-man crew dead near Sitapur in Uttar Pradesh, was one of the worst crashes involving the helicopter. The aircraft involved had logged only 2 hours of flying after being serviced at Bareilly. In another incident, former Northern Army Commander Lieutenant General Ranbir Singh and 8 others were injured in a crash in the Poonch sector in October 2019.